Hello and welcome to this special event where we're looking at the campaign that I've been running now for the Save or Dice show, which of course features on the Save or Dice YouTube channel. You can find that down below. So if you are tracking what's happening in the show, this is where you want to be. If you don't want spoilers, adios amigos, goodbye, go away, we don't want to see you here. And let us know if you've been enjoying that show, of course, by leaving your comments below before you do go away. For those of you that are tracking the campaign to see just how well or how badly I've managed to keep things on track, well, let's continue. My name, of course, is Guy, and well, let's delve straight into it. So last week saw, well, this week actually, but last week saw the release of the Save or Dice show, where, of course, we tried to enact our plan, which, according to the sheet behind me, was impale shards into PC and set up the God's War. Well, in general, in broad terms, there is a God's War that's definitely taking place, and PC was impaled by a shard. So, 2 out of 2 so far. How did we go further? Perseverance. Was perseverance expressed or tested in this game? Well, in the God's War, not so much, and I'm going to come back to the God's War as to why that didn't happen. In the space they were in that dungeon that they were in, that I felt certainly happened. They had to persevere in terms of going through all of those crypts and things. They stuck to their guns. They had to keep going forward. So there was a sense of perseverance, I feel, that came across there. Now, this was part of the master plot, absolutely. Yes, it was, and so it did what it needed to do. Did we introduce the villain? Oh boy, 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 oh boy. This is where things did not go so well, and there's a reason for it. Now, I'm going to try and zoom in here using this highly sophisticated software that I shouldn't really be using. Okay, so we had to introduce a villain, and the whole thing was about discovery. Did it feel like it was about discovery? As far as the player component was, as far as the player characters were concerned, I think, yes, it definitely felt like it was a discovery. It felt like that there was movement forward. It felt like that they were uncovering something that was going to take place. Now, I have been assured by the players that they have not watched any of these special event videos, so they don't know what's coming up. So they really are exploring this firsthand. So I think discovery certainly happened. We said it was a 1-1-1 adventure, so one sort of beat or so for them getting into the adventure, one beat for them being in the adventure, and then one beat for them getting out, and I think that's what happened. Although there was an emergent beat that came about unintentionally. I wonder if you can tell me what it was. So I'll let you to ponder that for a little bit. Okay, so continuing forward. What must the players learn? A four-legged animal helps restore the heart of a god whilst being attacked by humanoids with massive mouths. Several figures protect the four-legged animal. Okay, so a four-legged animal helps restore the heart of a god. Tick. Whilst being attacked by humanoids with massive mouths. Untick. That was not done. That did not get sent through. Several figures protect the four-legged animal. Kind of got indicated on that scroll. Now, that was a blunder. I should have somehow indicated, and the plan was that the dungeon, there was going to be a mural here, this first attempt, where they see what they needed to learn. I transformed that because of timing issues into an altar, which they had to use the MacGuffin for that they had originally found. And I made it a crumbling scroll. I don't know if any of you noticed that. Now, the reason why I did that was because, A, I didn't want to have them be able to refer back to this document later on. Why was that? Well, because the document was incomplete. I wasn't happy with how it was coming out. I was, of course, ad-libbing based on referencing this document that a four-legged animal helps. I missed the line of the humanoids with massive mouths. I really, really did. So that's why it was left out. Now, by having this document crumble, the next time they look at it, it can be dust. So it's gone. Whether they remember what was written there or not doesn't matter. It's gone. So there might have been more written there that they didn't sort of have access to, but it is gone. So they need to persevere with what knowledge they have. I'm okay with that. Leaving out the humanoids with massive mouths it doesn't change the story. It doesn't cause any less enjoyment. What it does do is that it doesn't tie the prophecy to the Predator, which is, according to our plan anyway, what's coming up next. So I missed out on that opportunity. I really, really did. And there's nothing I can do to recover it. I can't have them look at that scroll again now because the scroll's crumbled and lost. I can't have them look back at that scroll and say, oh, you left out a paragraph. Retconning stuff is never a good idea. So that's gone. That's lost. It is. It is what it is. And there's nothing wrong with that, because only me and the 3,000 odd people who've watched these videos know that that was the plan. So the craziness of this whole thing, right? So that's it. Now, one of the things that I think that was very important, and that won't normally happen in your games, is that because the players were helping me to record the trailer for the show, the trailer was very much focused on the donkey. Now, I wrote that trailer specifically to make it interesting and to come up with a MacGuffin that was based off of our original idea for the plot, that, you know, one of the shards was going to go into a horse. I changed it to donkey because, well, I'm afraid it was quite purely playing on the sentimentality that most of us have for the donkey from Shrek. If you hadn't picked up on that, that's where it came from, and that's where that closing line, "you were expecting a steed," came from, is because in Shrek, the donkey runs around claiming he's a steed. I'm a steed, I'm a steed! Anyway, so the whole thing changed towards donkey. So the solving of the pillar question, the trapped room that I had to come up with, the trap room was, I had made 4 pillars that you have to rotate around, and you basically had to just align the donkeys, the horses, to the center of the room. What were the clues? Well, the primary clue was the last pillar, which featured 2 circles, 1 circle, a stripe or a curly wave, and then 4 circles. And that was supposed to indicate that you had to turn the pillar to something that had 4 legs at any one time, or at least 4 of something. So if you look at the other animals, yes, some of the animals were confusing: the cat, the dog, the horse, and then the whale. The whale doesn't have 4, so that immediately excludes that. So just those 2 pillars alone don't help you. When you then start to look at other objects, you start to see that there was a snake, and that's a squiggle, so that doesn't really line up. Anyway, so the pillar thing was really, really straightforward. It was much more simple because the players had the knowledge that a horse or a donkey was involved. I suspect anyway, and I didn't have a problem with that because our time frame kept changing. Originally, I was told 4 hours. Then I was told aim for about 2 hours, and if push comes to shove, you can go to 2.5 hours. Then just before the show started, I was told, no, well, you can go to 2.5 hours, just don't push it beyond 2 hours and 40 minutes, which is ultimately what we ended up on. So the time frame kept changing. So I was very aware of how the time was moving on as we were going through the show, as we were going through the adventure. And I was adjusting the difficulties as needed by that. If you remember, we had spiders in the corridor that we were going to attack if necessary. They didn't even feature on that whole thing because there was something else that emerged out of the whole thing that I hadn't expected. So did we go through the trapped room? Yes, we did. Was there a mural? Kinda. Was a gem of value found? It was found, but not where we had intended it, according to our first attempt entry anyway. It had been placed elsewhere. It had been put into those sarcophagi, the metal sarcophagi that Draxus was opening up as fast as he possibly could. And I'm going to talk about that as well in a little bit, because of what happened there, which is a wonderful, wonderful example of players changing the course of an adventure in a different way because of something that you randomly threw in without necessarily thinking through what the ramifications could be. Okay, did we have Balor betraying the party, stealing the gem, and then leaving them trapped in a room but with a side passage as to indicate exit? Well, Balor certainly made an appearance because I suddenly referred to, well, not suddenly, I referred to my notes and went, oh gods, oh gods, oh gods, Balor was supposed to be there, and he wasn't. Thankfully, the barmaid was. So that's why the barmaid became Balor at the end. And I didn't necessarily have a problem with that. If I had planned it better, the barmaid would have been a little bit more sneaky, but as it was, I was playing the barmaid based off of roll. So if you watch the whole show, you'll see every time they ask the barmaid to do something, or every time they do something to the barmaid, I rolled a 20 just to sort of see whether her intelligence was succeeded or failed, whether she could come up with an idea or not. But I kept her very low-key, very in the background. The players kept her in the scene, and that actually saved me. If they had ignored the barmaid, she would have perished in that same room with the drunken man, and that's it. I wouldn't have had an option. We would not have been able to introduce Balor. So that would have been very disappointing for me. Having him rip off the face mask at the end, there was a reason why, by the way, I had such a dramatic gesture, and that literally was smoke and mirrors. If the barmaid had turned around and just said, haha, well, now I have the rod and I have stolen it from you and I leave dramatically and trap you in here, it wouldn't have had the same impact, because I hadn't been setting her up as being an untrustworthy character. She'd just kind of been following along. It didn't feel as if there was intent behind her action. It would have felt very hollow. By having her rip off this mask dramatically, it's shorthand for this is a villain who has now pulled off the mask of deception, and now has enacted their evil plan. So immediately it imprints upon the players that this is a bad person who has deceived them. They were pretending to be the barmaid. There is, of course, a gigantic hole currently in that entire plotline of Balor. How did Balor know that the tomb was directly underneath the tavern? Well, that's easily solved because we can. Balor was the one who had been digging underneath that tavern for months and months, because Balor had discovered that that might be the location of a hidden temple of these individuals whose name is the Velhokis. Was the name that I eventually came up with them for. And that was another mistake of mine, but anyway, we'll come back to that one. So we can have it that Balor was digging for months and months and months and months beforehand and had loosened the floorboards to the point that the whole space collapsed in. That's if the players ever go back to investigate that whole journey. We can now lock it away into our memory so that when they do confront Balor later on, that he can say, I was digging for months underneath that blasted tavern looking for the ruins, and then suddenly you came along and fell through and ruined everything. Well, you didn't ruin everything, actually. You made it a lot easier for me. You solved all of the traps, you took all of the damage, and, well, I got this rod from you. Now, the rod was something that I was seeding because I wasn't sure how to move the game along fast enough at that point. So let's now go back a little bit. So okay, well, hang on. Firstly, on the point of the adventure, did we hit what we needed to do? Was our objective achieved? Yes. Did we set up that it's a four-legged animal that's going to help them? Yes. Did we set up the Predashar? No, we did not set up the Predashar. So that's 2 out of 3 so far. Did we give them a bit of a history lesson about the Balor and that sort of thing, or did we introduce Balor? Yes, we did, but we didn't give him much information on that. Did the earthquake drop the tavern into the ancient dungeon? Yes, it did. Was it starting to flood? Yes, it was. The flooding, though, did not seem to bother the players. They didn't seem to have a sense of urgency moving through that temple, which caused me to have a little bit of a worry, let me tell you, because they were moving very slowly through that temple. I kept talking to them about the water is now at knee height, now it's at waist height. None of them really paid too much attention to that. I'm not sure why. Perhaps I should have made it fill up faster, but I couldn't make it fill up too quickly. Did they have a mural where they got told sort of about the future? Yes, they did. Did they find a gem of value? Yes, they did. Did Balor betray them at the end? Yes. So I would call that, on average, probably an 85% success. You can disagree with me and leave your comments below, but that generally, I think, is we followed through. Now, when we pop over to this template, let's have a look here. So Impale Shard was the objective. Yes. Earthquake drops tavern into the ancient dungeon. That's our opening scene. Yes, we did that. Carved out of iron. Yes, we did that. Flooding. Yes, we did that. Okay. Moving walls. No, we did not do that. And there's a reason why I didn't do that, was because of timing. Already the dungeon crawl was going to take us a long time because we had taken basically an hour to do that God's War thing, and so I didn't have enough time to really explore that dungeon. What do we expect? The PCs to escape the dungeon. Did they at the end? No, and there's a reason why I left it on a cliffhanger. That's primarily because it's on the cliffhanger, so now they don't know how they're going to get out or not. Next adventure, you're going to see, as if you stick with me, I'm just watching the time here as how long this is taking, but when we design the next adventure, which is the second half of this video, you'll see that we're going to take into account that cliffhanger that we made. Sights, heavy iron corridors, murals shining like silver, did not mention that. Scratched metallic surfaces. Distant booming, cracking and rumbling, vibrations, yes, did mention that, only once or twice briefly. Cold to touch, smooth, hard, seems to absorb heat, yes, okay, so mentioned that. Iron-like flavor to the air, dry and dusty, yes, hit that. Smells like old coins, no, I did not, because we had water with beer, so we were talking about the water flavor was mentioned more than anything else, which is something that I didn't take into account. Did we have a map of the underground dungeon? Yes, we did, and then name list 10 things that came up there. This is something that I did not use. I don't know why. I had it there in front of me, and I was panicking trying to come up with a name for the race. Well, I wasn't panicking, but I thought they might want a name, so I created this name. I should have just pulled one of these. The Gargarian monks would have been a much better choice, I think, than what I came up with. So I didn't use this component, and I could have. Okay, so what did I do wrong in broad strokes? Well, I didn't introduce Balor well enough, in my opinion. I felt that a little bit of something strange at the very beginning, I think, would have worked better. Two, and this for me was the biggest thing, and this was kind of what threw me off, is the Fantasy Grounds is, I think, a really cool and simple interface. It's really something that you're not going to be tinkering with. It's like Mac version of an operating system versus Windows. Mac, everything is there for you. It does what it wants you to do, and it won't do anything else. So Fantasy Grounds, I think, is very good at that. And the more I use it, the more I like it. Would I prefer that over something like Roll20? So far, Fantasy Grounds, I have spent more time in as a GM than Roll20. Roll20 certainly is looks like it's a very steep learning curve from my side of things. I like the look of Fantasy Grounds better as well. So, but you never know. I'm not passing judgment yet on either of them. So, in Fantasy Grounds, we had done quite a lot of prep, a lot of testing beforehand. But what I hadn't done, and I had kept this quiet from Cody and Dave, who were helping me sort of learn the program from Taking 20 and Nerdarchy, I had kept quiet that I wanted them to start out as dragons, as gods. And so I kind of said, okay, well, how do I get you guys to see stats for other creatures? You know, if I, the druid turns into a bear, how does he get the bear stats and stuff? So they had told me how to do that. So that's what I did with the gods. I went and created the names of the gods. You couldn't see that on the stream, of course, but I had all of the names there. And then I assigned the gods to the characters. What I had forgotten to do, though, was to ask how you then remember which creature has been assigned to which player. So I got myself horribly confused on that. I think that, generally speaking, the intention of the Gods' War came across. That Brax tore his own heart out, that Gushula's fighting him. What was wonderful was to see how the players tried to interpret their gods. They hadn't got very much information on the gods they were representing. I was giving them little pieces as they started to pick up their character of that god. They got involved in the war as well, and they joined different sides, which I really liked. I hadn't anticipated that. That was a lovely emergent property. So now we really have a Gods' War going on, where different gods are fighting with one another. I think it set up the Gods' War. I think it gave them context, and I think that it gave the players some insight as to the scale of this whole thing. As for the tavern sequence, I couldn't have been happier. I think it kind of went through exactly how we wanted it to run through. So I'm not going to break that one down too much. The map was a challenge. I made the map too big in comparison. So those of you who kind of watched the map and then watched the episode, you might have noticed that they got out sort of a room or two earlier. Now, why did that happen? Well, because of the sarcophagi. Now, that was my biggest challenge, was that the first sarcophagus that they opened, there was a trap and they took damage from it, but they didn't seem to care. They took out the object, which I hadn't planned for because, well, I didn't think they were going to open the sarcophagus. I thought they were going to be running away from the water. Anyway, they opened the sarcophagus, so I gave them this amber disc. Now, that's a stock standard kind of, here is the key to the dungeon because I need you to get through and to have something that's of value that I can later on take away or deny. So I gave them that amber disc, which allowed them to open and close doors, etc., etc., etc. And it started to work, except then that they continued to search the sarcophagi. So the second sarcophagi is like, well, we've got to give them a gem. That was part of the plan anyway, was to give them a gem of value that is going to be stolen by Balor from them. So there we go. Give them this gem thing which radiates necromantic magic, and that gives them something to do. But then they went on to the next sarcophagus. So for the next one, I thought, rather than to really focus on delaying tactics or slowing things down, I didn't want to do anything like that, and I didn't want to continue to give them treasure, and because it had kind of happened, and I was worried that they were then going to start to search all the sarcophagi. So that's why I put in that very cryptic card that said "for you." Now, what that actually was that the inhabitants of this temple, those who were sacrificing themselves to divine the future, the last one who basically, just before you sacrifice yourself, turn the torches off, climb into the coffin, because this one is for you. The others are all taken. So that was the original plan, but then they decided, no, this must apply to them because they're dragonborn. It was written in Draconic. Nah, just use Draconic because it's an old language. Anyway, so they climbed into this thing, and then I had to decide what was going to happen. Now, the players were saying, it's going to take us to a treasure realm, it's going to kill us, it's going to do this, it's going to do that. So I thought, no, what is our theme? Our theme is perseverance, isn't it? And this is a temple of discovering the future, or at least trying to predict the future anyway. So it's perseverance and it's predicting the future. What space could I think of in real life that allows you to almost transcendental meditate your way into the future? Now, the best thing I could think of was either an anechoic chamber, which is something that YouTubers hope to have, which is basically a soundproof room, but to the point that you can't hear anything, so it's absolutely soundproof. Either an anechoic chamber or a sensory deprivation chamber, where you're floating in water and you just can't feel, see, hear, smell, or taste anything, apparently. And both of those require a tremendous amount of getting used to, because your mind starts going mad. It literally starts to go mad. So I thought, great, that's exactly what's going to happen. People are going to climb into these sarcophagi. They're going to start to freak out because of the environment that they're in, and that is going to project itself into the sort of being able to see the future. So that's the space that I made it. But what happened was that they became fixated with this thing. So they started to put everybody into it, which I thought was fantastic, except that it was chewing into my time for them to get through the dungeon. There wasn't much that I could do about that. I couldn't change the way that the mechanic worked any more than I should have or could have, and so it was what it was. So that was an interesting space. That was a very interesting kind of thing that came up. And again, it was just trying to think out on the fly how to do that. I could never have prepped something like that. I don't think so. I don't think you can prep for something like that. And the idea of it just being more treasure or something like that, certainly that could have worked. But I wanted it to be something different anyway. So that's what it was. All right. So that, I think, summarizes pretty much the space of where it was. If we hadn't been on Fantasy Grounds, I would have handed out the NPCs of the gods to the characters. I could have put in a little descriptor, sort of giving them motivations and things. So it could have been a little bit more polished from that perspective. But otherwise, that adventure played out pretty much as I had planned it. So I'm going to chalk up Adventure 1 as a win. All right, so what was seeded in that? Pretty much anything that was seeded in that was Balor, that they've stolen this artifact. So I'm going to add it in here quickly. Is that Balor stole a silver rod with 3 amber gems that gives off necromantic magic. Locked them in dungeon. What else did I seed in that? I don't think there was very much else that I kind of threw in there. Prophecy is still there. No, so that's it. That's what was seeded there. Not a huge amount, but they didn't interact with a huge amount of people either. So again, I'm not too phased by that. All right, so we're going to save that up so that I've got it for next time. That's great. Okay, so that is having gone through. Okay, I'll come back to that if I haven't. Okay, so now moving on. we've now done Adventure 1. We're going to put that down as a win, absolutely. Adventure 2. Now, I have actually written up this list that we had done in previous videos. I think it's the second video or the first video where we talk about plot and coming up with adventures. So I've now populated this out onto this sheet. Now, if you recall, we're only running 12 games, so we've only got 12 to work with. So we've kind of dropped off testing stuff as stuff, so you can actually ignore really these if you look where my cursor is, you can ignore the building stuff and the testing stuff of this plot outline. So rather, let's look here. So God Showdown, Impale Shard, and Give Plot, done. Item number 1 is done. I'm going to put a red stripe through it because I can. Okay, great stuff. Yes. Okay, good. So, done. Lovely. Item number 2, the Predator. Okay, so this is really going to be fairly combat heavy. Unlike the God's War, where there was lots of combat going on, everyone was making like 3 attacks, and they were just doing a huge amount of damage, which I thought was kind of cool. They seem to certainly enjoy it. Here we've got the Predator that we need to now invite our players to encounter. Our players, when we last left them, were trapped inside that dungeon. The door had been closed and sealed. Time to move forward. So we need to get them. What we look at when we look at this layout is we need to introduce the Predator towards them, and we need to give them a hint as to where the horse is. Now, the horse, of course, is being now a donkey. So that's the plan. They need to get the horse. Then we're going to go into her backstory. Now, I've got 5 players. Originally, I only had 4. So our timing is getting now a little bit critical. So they get the horse, and we go to backstory number 1. And backstory here really just refers to the fact that it's player character story number 1. Now, who is that going to be? Well, there's a fair chance that it's going to be Draxus. Draxus being the Dragonborn archaeologist who was running around opening up all those sarcophagi and that sort of thing. So there's a chance that it's going to be that person. There is a chance that it could very well be, say, Jenks or Vankus, perhaps, although I don't think it's going to be Vankus, and there's a reason for that. Unite the items to save the world is a plot mission that we have to hit, and Race to the Last Shard is definitely a plot that we need to hit. Now, that last shard is going to be in the Undersphere, in the very darkest center of the planet. That is where Vankus is from. He is from the Undersphere. So I think backstory number 3 could very well be Vankus having to return there, or backstory number 4. So Vankus is kind of down there. As to our paladin, Barnabas is the one who's got the shard. So I think Barnabas is going to be the one who comes up first, or perhaps second. Unite items to save the world is probably an adventure where he realizes that he can use the shard to detect the other shards. I think that's going to be how it works, but to detect a location very specifically. The horse, of course, the shard will start to point. It's in his shoulder, actually. It's going to start pointing. So it's not Barnabas. Why am I saying it's Barnabas? It's Valentine who's got the bolt in him. So Valentine's story will be somewhere there. So maybe it will be Barnabas. I don't know. Anyway, so that's what those backstories 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 relate to. It's character-based stories where we're going to learn more about the characters. And I've just kind of liberally scattered them in between the important things. I didn't want to break from Predator and the horse. I could have put a backstory at number 3, item number 3 here. I didn't, and there's a reason for it. And it really is as a result of the production of a YouTube channel rather than as a DM's choice. If it was my choice, I would put backstory at number 3 and the horse at number 4. However, the trailer had so much emphasis on the damn donkey, people were so obsessed with the donkey, and there was so much comment saying, well, if this show isn't about the donkey, then I don't want to be in the show. I don't want to watch the show. So I've got to bring in the donkey as fast as I can. I can't swap the donkey and the Predator around because I need to introduce my villains now. I need to introduce that idea of a central nemesis. So that's what the Predator show is going to be all about, and I've got to do that. So that's the thinking there. Okay, so very quickly, because I am cognizant that we're heading for the 30-minute mark. So if you're still with us, I really appreciate it. And I hope these videos are helping you understand my process as to how I go about doing that. So, okay, now let's fill in this sheet fairly quickly, because we now know what everything is. So it is the Predator. That's our goal, is we've got to introduce the Predator. As simple as that. No, nothing fancy. We don't need fireworks for this one. We just have to introduce the Predator. Okay? Predator. Okay. Predator. Now, our theme is perseverance, once again. Perseverance. Or however you spell it. Doesn't matter, it's fine note keeping anyway. Okay, perseverance, and this is still a master plot, so yes, it is an X. Thank you. And so now we go and we say, okay, well, who is being introduced? Now, we haven't spoken about a nemesis. Gashul is this great god of evil and corruption and destruction. So the players are not going to face him. They're level 3. They're really not going to. They're not going to face a god. That's not going to happen. We've got other gods to do that with. So who is our nemesis? Who is our big bad? And I've been thinking about that, and I think it has to be a Predator. So I think we have to introduce our nemesis at this point. All right. Now, there's going to be another video that launches at the same time as this one on developing our nemesis. So watch out for that, or just go straight to that if you want to skip this part. But anyway, so we've got a nemesis, and what are we going to be doing? What are we going to be doing here? Well, we've done discovering. So another discovery adventure, I think, would be overkill. It would be boring. So we're going to go and we're going to say collecting what? There's nothing to collect at the moment in terms of our master plot. Remember our master plot, the horse is something that we need to collect at some point. So I'm not going to use collecting. That leaves me with delivering or thwarting. Thwarting generally means to defeat or overcome the enemy. They don't know about enemies yet, and I'm not convinced that it's now time to introduce that. I'm going to go with delivering. What or who are they delivering? Okay, so it's a delivery. So with delivery, what do we expect from delivery? Do we expect obstacles? Okay, we definitely expect obstacles when you are delivering something, whether that is an obstacle to start with, whether it's difficult terrain, whatever the case might be, it doesn't matter. So we expect obstacles. Delays, rerouting, lost, out of time. Okay, those are things that spring immediately to my mind as to the outcome of the adventures. That's kind of what I'm thinking. If you want a good example to think about, an old movie called Planes, Trains and Automobiles, that was a delivering movie. They had to try and deliver themselves home, and it was everything to do with everything about preventing them from getting there, and they faced obstacles, they faced delays, they faced reroutes, they had to go to different parts, they had to kind of go in backwards. It was absolute chaos. Any road trip movie often is just a delivery story, and those are the things that generally come through. So those are the things that we can rely on. Okay, what must the players learn? Well, the players must learn about the Predator, the Nemesis, and the horse, the donkey. All right, that's what they must learn. Why do I say they must learn about the donkey? Because adventure number 3 is the horse, the donkey. We know that. So I need to, at the end, and this is the order that I've written it in, I need to, at the end, they need to learn about the donkey. They have to learn about the location of the donkey. At the very least, they need to learn about the location of the donkey. Or they need to hear rumors about the donkey so the players know where to go in the next episode. Okay, obviously the Predator, because that's what the whole thing is about. And of course we need to introduce the Nemesis because we've said it's a Nemesis-based thing. Okay, great. So introduce the goal, introduce the enemy, introduce the situation. What is the goal? The goal is to get somewhere. Okay, get somewhere. Now, why do they need to get somewhere? Where is it they are trying to get? And I think the answer to that is, instead of somewhere, get away from Predator. I think that's a good one, because that now gives us a chase sequence. Okay. Intro to the enemy. Well, what's our situation first before we get there? Our situation is we currently have adventurers who are trapped in a tomb that's filling up with water. Boring, it's done. We've done the tomb thing. We've done the water thing. We're over with that. How do we start this in a really cool way? I'm actually jumping ahead on the template. How do we start this now? Well, as far as I can see it, the best way to do it, because we've got some on the one side of the wall and we've got some on the other side of the door. I'm not interested in spending an hour for these poor players to try and figure out how to open the door and close the door. Blah. No. What I want to do is I want to have the players, I want to have the amount of water in this dungeon causes one of the metal panels that joins both rooms together to rip away and to have the water gush out. And that's going to wash the players out. It's going to wash the players out over the edge of the island. So they start falling, because that's just so much fun. I mean, I can't think of anything more evil than that. How do I now not kill the players? How do we not kill the players? They're falling, free falling into the undersphere from the terrasphere. They will die. There's no reason for them not to die. I could have a geyser of water shoot up and save them, but that sounds very bleh. They've got to get away from the Predator, right? Right. Okay, so what have we got that we can use? Hot air balloon. They fall onto a hot air balloon. Could work. That's... we've got the skywells. The skywells are fairly unique to this system, or at least this setting from this sense. So skywells. What if they fell onto a skywell? That's quite fun. That's quite cool. And then that means that the skywell becomes the location for the adventure. We've only got 2.5 hours. We don't have a lot to do on there. And then they've got to try and get the skywell to go where they want it to go. Where do they want it to go? Well, that's going to be the shard. Pulling Valentine. It's going to pull Valentine in a direction. So perhaps he's going to want to try and steer it in that direction. There we go. There we go. There we go. Okay. So, waterfall onto skywell. Okay, so that's intro to the situation. I think that works quite nicely. Okay, and then the Predator. Set up journey. Let me just fill this in quickly. Shard pulls Valentine towards donkey. Where is the donkey? Solosphere, because we haven't been there before. Solosphere. Okay, great stuff. We are definitely making progress. Okay, lovely. We only need one act because we're a 1-1-1 at the moment. So that's good. So then we need to introduce our enemies. So the Predator, can they fly? I don't like the idea of them being able to fly on their own. It makes them too powerful. They can kind of move around a lot better than the party can. But what could they be riding that's particularly terrifying? What else have we got? We've got air balloons. We've got gliders, which are boring because they only go down. We've got the geezers, which ride them up. We've got the skywells. What if they were riding drakes? So I don't want to go with the wraithy look and feel. And riding drakes makes it sound like fell beasts in the Nazgul. But there is something pretty terrifying about that. So what if the Predator were riding these leathery, wyvern-like beasts? So they can kind of ride after the Skywell. So that gives us our race and escape, which I quite like. And then, of course, we can introduce our nemesis. Okay, great. So riding wyverns attack party. Because they're lured by the shard and Valentine's chest. Lured by shard. Great stuff. Okay. Shut it. Give me a warning sign. Okay, great, good, fine, thank you very much. And then the final ending, well, the final showdown is a nemesis, and he's a blunt force nemesis. So by blunt force, I mean he's going to be attacking the party all the time. Our lead Predasharian, the lead Predator, is going to attack the party like Darth Vader, you know, constantly on Luke's case, just always there. So the final showdown, I think, will be on Skywell. Battle. Okay, so we've got two combats, at least two combats. We've got a running combat, which is the wyverns flying around this giant sky whale, busy sailing forward. And then we've got this final showdown where the lead Predator arrives. Like I said, that's a nemesis that we will build upon as we get there. And list 10 names. Well, they're going to be on the Skywell, so we need to give them a guide NPC. We need someone who's going to be able to control that Skywell. I don't like the idea of them having to do that on their own. So we're going to have them. We're going to give them a guide. Let's say the guide is an elf from the Solosphere. So his name will be Atnim Kasem. And he will have a partner. Let's say the partner's name is Javran Surak. That's just sort of the keeping the naming conventions going of the map. Let's do that. Okay, thank you. We'll pop you down there. I should probably make it bigger so that during the middle of the show I don't miss them. Okay, and then the Predator. What should the Predator have names? The name should be quite dark, let's say. So Garth. Garth is a dark name. Garul. Zakruk, Garul. The double U is because of Gashul. I want them to have that sort of link. Hathul and say, how many of they face? 3 of them, plus some little minions and things. All right, and then the nemesis name we'll come up with when we get there. Okay, great. So this is now our plan. This is what we're going to do. So I'm going to go and create a map, which I'm not going to do a video of because it's just more map making. But I'm going to create a map of a Skywell so that we can have a nice, interesting combat on that. And we're going to have 2 combats. Each combat is 5 players. So you're looking at around about 5 minutes a round. The players can last arguably for 4 rounds each. So that's at least 20 minutes per combat. So there's an hour basically that we can throw away for combat. That leaves us with an hour for role playing, for NPC sort of interactions, that kinds of things. Might not be enough of it. The waterfall onto a Skywell is going to take 10 minutes, no more than that. So we're looking at an hour and 10 minutes base, and then 50 minutes, an hour for NPC stuff. We might have to pad this out a little bit. Let's think about this. This is a process I go through, so you can always come back and change and add stuff to things. The Skywell is racing away from these Predator. They're trying to outrun them to begin with. Then the Predator arrive. They have a combat. In the outrunning, it could be quite a nice escape route. That could be interesting. So let's say here we're going to have travel and difficulty, difficult journey. This is where they're going to have to make rolls and things to control this animal. I'm realizing now that I released for Patreons anyway an adventure module last year, I think it was, that featured a Skywell in flight. And that was interesting. Anyway, so that's definitely throwbacks to previous adventures that I've done, although this one is different with the Predashars attacking. Travel and difficult journey. I think that's enough. That's more than enough. That's going to keep us going for quite some time. Okay, great stuff. So there we are. There's our plan. There's our adventure. I'll catch you live on Wednesday night for the next broadcast of Save or Dice, where you get to watch this adventure in action. Until next time, leave your comments below. Give me some insights. Give me some feedback. It's a very long video. I apologize, but well, these things take time to work through, and I hope you've enjoyed listening. And hit the like button if you did, of course, and you can always show your love for the channel by hitting that subscribe button. Recommend us to others if you think there's value in this. I've been speaking to a lot of people on these videos, and certainly there seems to be a definite value for you guys. If you want me to talk about more things or go more in depth, again, let me know in those comments so that I can react appropriately. Or you could just join us on Discord. The link to the Discord server is down there. And then you can talk directly to me, as I'm on Discord most days, and when I can be, so that we can talk directly. Anyway, until next time, I wish you and yours the happiest of gaming.